There was one family photograph Elvis Presley never seemed ready to finish. Every time the photographer lowered the camera, Elvis smiled and quietly said, "Let's take one more." Not because the picture was wrong, because the afternoon was right, and some part of him understood, without being able to say it out loud, that afternoons like this one did not stay. This is the story of that afternoon. An ordinary Tuesday at Graceland in the spring of 1971, when nothing was scheduled and nobody was famous, and a man who could have anything in the world simply did not want a good day to end. The grounds at Graceland in April carried a particular kind of light. Soft, unhurried, the Tennessee sun still finding its full strength. The dogwoods were out. The grass had that new green color it only holds for a few weeks a year before summer flattens it into something more ordinary. Elvis was outside before noon, which was, in itself, a small event. He had never kept regular hours. The nights pulled him under late, and the mornings let him go reluctantly. But on this particular day, he had woken early, restless in the specific way of a man who senses, without knowing why, that something in the day ahead is worth being present for. Priscilla was already on the lawn with Lisa Marie when he came down. 3 years old, in a yellow dress that had been fought over that morning. Lisa Marie had opinions about clothing, strong ones, and Priscilla had learned which battles were worth winning. This one hadn't been. Elvis came across the grass in his robe, coffee in hand, and stood for a moment just watching them. Priscilla saw him first. She didn't call out. She just smiled the smile of a woman who has caught someone doing something private and decided not to interrupt it. "You're up," she said, when he finally crossed the distance. "Couldn't sleep through a day like this," he said. He sat down on the grass beside them, still in his robe, coffee balanced carelessly in one hand. A man with 43 rooms behind him, and nowhere he particularly wanted to be except exactly here. The afternoon that followed had no plan, and that was its whole design. Lisa Marie moved through her own private universe of grass and dandelions, and one determined ladybug she had decided to name and follow across half the lawn. She narrated everything she did, in the total, unself-conscious way of a 3-year-old who has not yet learned that some thoughts are meant to stay unspoken. Elvis and Priscilla sat near each other on a blanket someone had brought out, not doing anything in particular. Talking. That easy, low-register talking that happens between two people who are simply glad to share an afternoon and have stopped needing it to be about anything. He told her about a dream he'd had, something strange and half-remembered, involving a highway that kept changing direction. She laughed at the wrong parts on purpose, the way she liked to tease him, and he pretended to be wounded by it. "You're not even listening," he said. "I'm listening. I just think your subconscious needs help." He laughed. The real laugh, the one that came from somewhere lower than performance. The one his friend said you could hear across a room and know immediately it wasn't for anyone's benefit. Lisa Marie, hearing her father laugh, abandoned the ladybug entirely and ran over to find out what was funny. She didn't need the joke explained. She just wanted to be near the sound of it. She climbed into his lap without asking. He made room for her without noticing he was doing it. A member of the household staff passed by the window with a tray of iced tea and paused there for a moment longer than the errand required. She would mention it later, in the offhand way people mention things that only become significant in hindsight, that there was something about the three of them on the blanket that made her stop. Nothing dramatic, just a family, arranged by nothing but its own gravity, on an afternoon that asked nothing of any of them. She set the tray down on the porch steps and left them alone. It was Charlie Hodge who brought the camera out. He'd gone back to one of the cars for something else entirely. A jacket, maybe, or a set of keys, and had come back across the lawn with a small boxy Kodak Instamatic in his hand, the kind that lived in glove compartments and kitchen drawers across the whole country that year. Unremarkable, easy, built for exactly this, afternoons nobody planned to remember on purpose. Thought somebody ought to get a picture, Charlie said. Look at the three of you sitting there. It wasn't a request. It was barely even a suggestion. Just a man noticing something and reaching, almost reflexively, for the nearest tool to hold onto it. Elvis looked up. For a second, something crossed his face that the people who knew him best would have recognized. A kind of quiet arrival, as if he was only now realizing what the afternoon had actually contained. Yeah, he said. Get us. Priscilla smoothed Lisa Marie's hair without thinking about it. An automatic mother's gesture, and Lisa Marie squirmed away from it immediately. Equally automatic. Nobody arranged themselves. Nobody said the word pose. The first picture was almost an accident. Elvis was mid-sentence, saying something to Priscilla about the dogwoods, when Charlie lifted the camera. Priscilla was looking at Elvis, not the lens. Lisa Marie was looking at absolutely nothing in particular, caught in that middle distance small children stare into, when their attention is briefly gone somewhere adults can't follow. The shutter clicked. Nobody had been ready. That was the whole point of it. Let's do a real one, Priscilla said, laughing, already reaching to fix her hair. They arranged themselves the second time. Elvis kneeling in the grass, Lisa Marie between them. Priscilla's hand finding his shoulder the way it did without her deciding to put it there. Everyone looked at the camera. Everyone smiled the smile people produce on command. Pleasant and slightly too even. The smile of people who know a picture is currently being taken of them. Charlie took it. It was fine. It was a nice photograph, the kind that would have sat perfectly well in a frame on a shelf. One more, Elvis said. Lisa Marie, look here, sugar. She didn't look. She was watching the ladybug again, which had reappeared on Priscilla's sandal. And this fact was, to her, considerably more interesting than a camera. Charlie took the third one anyway. Lisa Marie in profile, entirely absorbed, Elvis and Priscilla both laughing at her instead of the lens. That's a good one, Charlie said, checking the little counter on the side of the camera. Got some good ones. He started to lower it. Everyone began, in the small, unconscious way people do after a photograph, to relax out of the moment. Priscilla's hand slipping from Elvis's shoulder. Lisa Marie already twisting to chase the ladybug properly this time. The afternoon resuming its ordinary shape. And then Elvis said it. Let's take one more. Nobody quite understood why. They had 3 photographs already. Good ones, even. Charlie had said so himself. There was no obvious reason to keep going. No missing shot anyone had been chasing. Nothing left unrecorded that needed recording. But there was something in the way Elvis said it. Not the tone of a man directing a photograph. The tone of a man who was not, in fact, thinking about the camera at all. He was looking at Priscilla. He was looking at Lisa Marie, halfway turned toward the ladybug, her yellow dress bright against the grass. He was looking at the particular quality of the light, which had shifted, in the last 20 minutes, from midday white into something warmer, lower, more forgiving. He wasn't trying to get a better picture. He was trying to keep the afternoon from ending. Priscilla noticed it. She would say, years later, that there was a specific look on his face in that moment. Not sad exactly, but close to it. The look of a man doing quiet arithmetic about how much of something he actually got to have. She didn't ask him about it. She simply moved back into position, her hand finding his shoulder again, and waited. Come here, Lisa, Elvis said, low, holding a hand out toward her. And this time, when she came, she wasn't looking at a ladybug or a dandelion or anything that had briefly stolen her 3-year-old attention. She looked at her father's face, open, unguarded, entirely hers. And something in that expression made her laugh. Not a performed giggle, a real one, sudden and unprompted. The kind that arrives from nowhere in particular and takes the whole body with it. Elvis laughed back, surprised into it, the sound coming out of him before he had decided to make it. Priscilla, watching both of them, started laughing too. At the two of them. At the ladybug crisis that had apparently escalated into something diplomatically serious. At the sheer, undignified, unrepeatable ordinariness of the moment she happened to be standing inside. Charlie lifted the camera and, this time, didn't ask anyone to hold still. He just took the picture. It is, by every account of the people who were there that day, the photograph that survived. Not the composed one, not the one where everyone looked correctly at the lens with the appropriate expression assembled in advance. The one where Elvis is kneeling in the grass with his arm around his daughter, his head tilted slightly, caught mid-laugh with his mouth open and his eyes nearly closed. Lisa Marie beside him, one hand still half raised toward something out of frame. Her whole small face collapsed into the particular joy of a child laughing at her father laughing. Priscilla standing just behind them, her hand resting on Elvis's shoulder. Her own laughter caught at its peak. Her head tipped back slightly, unposed, unrehearsed, entirely real. Nobody is looking at the camera correctly. Elvis's eyes are shut. Priscilla's mouth is open too wide for a formal portrait. Lisa Marie is a blur of yellow motion at the edge of stillness. It is not, by any technical measure, a good photograph. It became, by every account, the family's favorite one. Not because it was perfect, because it wasn't. Because in the middle of a mansion built to contain every kind of grandeur money could purchase, on a Tuesday nobody had planned, and nobody would have thought to record on purpose, a small boxy camera had managed to catch 3 people exactly as they actually were. Not arranged, not composed, not aware of being watched. Just a father, a mother, and a little girl in a yellow dress, laughing at something that would never fully translate to anyone who wasn't there. Charlie Hodge kept the camera in the car for years afterward. The same one, the little Instamatic, unremarkable on every shelf it ever sat on. It took hundreds of pictures over the seasons that followed. Birthdays, holidays, ordinary days that blurred together the way ordinary days do. But the people who were close to Elvis in later years remembered that this particular photograph, the 4th one, the one nobody had planned to take, sat differently among the others. It found its way into a frame. It stayed somewhere visible, not archived away with the rest. Elvis, in the years that followed, would sometimes stop in front of it. Not for long. Just a moment, the way a person pauses at a window to check the weather. Except what he was checking was something closer to a temperature that no longer existed anywhere except inside that rectangle of paper. He never fully explained why he had asked for one more picture that day. He didn't need to. Anyone who has ever tried to hold on to a good afternoon a little longer than it wanted to be held, anyone who has ever heard a child laugh and felt, underneath the joy of it, a small current of tenderness for how briefly these things last, already understands exactly what he was doing. Priscilla kept a copy of the photograph for the rest of her life, long after the frame it first sat in had been replaced by others. She would say, when asked about it, that it was not the best picture ever taken of any of them individually, that there were sharper ones, better lit ones, ones where everyone's expression was flattering in the way photographs are supposed to be flattering. But there was only one where you could look at it and hear the laughter. Only one where the moment seemed to keep happening every time someone looked at it again. That was the one Elvis kept closest. He wasn't posing for a photograph. He was asking time, as directly and as helplessly as anyone ever has, to wait just one more minute. It didn't. It never does. But for one afternoon in the spring of 1971, on a lawn at Graceland, a small camera caught the moment anyway. Not the pose, not the performance, but the thing underneath it. A man on his knees in the grass, laughing with his whole body. His wife's hand on his shoulder and his daughter's laughter ringing out beside him. None of them yet knowing how much they would come to need this exact, unremarkable, perfectly ordinary Tuesday. "Let's take one more," he said. And for just a little while longer, they did.